Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the English with Grace podcast. This is a centralized hub for students, teachers, and English language learners to practice their English and listen to the differing opinions of other English speakers. The content and focus of this podcast will vary, and my goal is to introduce listeners to a variety of perspectives, backgrounds, and experiences as we discuss topics that are also presented in my English with Grace conversation classes. So I'm very excited to have you here. I hope you enjoy this discussion, and of course, like and subscribe if you like it. And I look forward to seeing you in some of our upcoming conversation classes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the English with Grace podcast. Today, I have invited Richard to discuss the power of story from entertainment to daily communication. And first, I would just like to begin with some introductions. Richard, if you can share your name, pronouns, cultural background, and upbringing.
Sure. It's Richard Rosser, he, him. And so my cultural background, I grew up in Oklahoma, which Grace, you just said that you grew up in Iowa, so we were neighbors as kids, sort of. So I grew up in Oklahoma, and I always loved movies and TV. And so when I graduated from high school, I went off to seek my fortune, and I went to a small liberal arts college that had one film course. I took that film course and I said to my professor, I love animation. Can I make an animated movie? And he said, okay, I can't help you there, but if you want to make a movie, you can. And so I found an old 16 millimeter projector in the back of a closet. So I pulled that out and I made this little 3-minute black and white animated film with clay figures. And it turned out really fun. And he said, you know what you should do? You should enter this into some festivals, contests. And I did, and it ultimately ended up winning a Student Academy Award. And so I went, wait a second, oh my gosh, if these people think I have this talent, I guess I should take advantage of it. So I moved to New York, I went to NYU, and got in the film and TV. Well, I got in the film, TV, commercial, and music video business. And then a few years after that, I moved to Los Angeles and really honed my craft in TV. And I've worked on shows like Grey's Anatomy, Chicago Med, This Is Us, MacGyver, the reboot, and 24, which was like a zeitgeist show back in between 2001 and 2010.
Okay.
So that's where I come from, Grace.
That is so amazing. I have many questions, but let me go back really quick. Was the liberal arts college in Oklahoma, or did you? I missed.
No, it was in Virginia.
In Virginia. Okay, and then you ended up in New York.
Yes.
And now Los Angeles, and you live there now.
Yeah, lived in Los Angeles for about 20 years.
Okay, amazing. Well, my first question, and the reason I've invited you on the podcast is because I'd love to hear more about your experiences on those shows. And just to recap, you said Grey's Anatomy, Chicago Med, This Is Us, and 24 was the zeitgeist show. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, can you share your experiences and insights from your involvement in those?
Oh, absolutely. So 24 was truly an amazing show. When I came onto that show, I worked with the production manager and the producer on a couple of different shows. And they called me up and they said, hey, can you come in? We want to talk to you about a project. And I said, okay, sure. And so I sat down and they said, okay, we're doing this show. It's called 24. And it's every episode is an hour in the day. And we shoot the stories take place in real time, but it's not a reality show. It's a fictional account about this guy who's an anti-terrorist guy. And so there's 24 episodes in the day. So it'd be 24 episodes instead of 22, which was at that point was the norm for a TV show. Oh. And I said, okay, sounds interesting, right? And I said, who's in it? And they said, well, Kiefer Sutherland is in it. Now, at this point in Kiefer Sutherland's career, he had been a huge movie star, and then he had dropped out of the business and become a rodeo rider. He was doing, I don't know what all he was doing. He was doing roping and barrel races and all sorts of stuff, and he had literally dropped out of the acting business. And I said, so who's going to be in? And they said Kiefer Sutherland, and I wondered, well, wait a second, he quit the business. He's not acting anymore. And he said, no, 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 he's coming back. He's going to do this TV show. And I said, all right, well, it all sounds good. So we started off, and when the first season, we didn't even know if we were going to get picked up for the back half of all the shows. We finished up, I'm trying to think, I think we finished up the first 15 episodes, and we didn't know if we were going to continue. So the show could have ended right there, but it went on the air and became such a huge phenomenon. 24 was actually the first show that folks were able to binge watch. And now this is before streaming. This is before all the streaming services and everything. This is back, 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And so what happened was the first season, some folks were starting to watch it, and it got popular. And then all the folks who hadn't watched it the first season, then the DVD set came out. And that was back when, DVDs, you'd either have to buy the DVD set or go to Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? I mean, some people don't even know what Blockbuster is. There were these stores that you could go to, and they had videos, VHS videos and DVD videos lining the walls everywhere. And so you could go and you could rent, I say download, you could rent 4 discs for 24. They came in these packages, folders of 24, of 4, and you could rent that and binge 8 episodes a weekend. And so people would come into work on Monday just bleary-eyed, going, what'd you do? Did you party really hard? No, I watched 8 episodes or 16 episodes of 24. Oh my gosh. And so it was the first show that people really latched onto, and it was binge worthy.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad that you said binge worthy. We just discussed this in one of my classes, what it means to binge a show.
Yes.
And binge watch something, and I've explained it, but that's really interesting. I had never thought about binge watching before Netflix and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, right? They still, every once in a while, you have a show that they drop an episode at a time. I mean, I think Succession was that way, right?
Yeah.
But other shows, they just, now they just dump all the episodes.
Right.
And so you could literally get lost in a show for a whole weekend, a new season of a show. But back in time, right? Originally you had to queue up and you had to watch the show at the time it was scheduled. Or, once we had VCRs and DVDs, the recording services and everything, you could record it and watch it. But these young kids have it so easy today. You could just watch TV whenever you want.
Oh, I know. It's one of those things though where my grandpa does talk like that. He's like, oh wow, just so easy to do this. Okay, so that was 24. Would you like to share anything about, were you doing similar things on all of these TV shows, or did you have different roles for each of them?
Oh no, I was doing the same role. And the next show, This Is Us, I worked on, which was an awesome show. The acting, all the actors, the group of actors we had on that show was truly spectacular. Mandy and Milo, and it was just fantastic. Yeah. And it was an incredible experience. Now that show was very, very different. 24 was a very complex show because we were doing a lot of stunts and effects, and we had a lot of elements. We had tons of different characters. We had, Jack Bauer, we had all the folks in the CTU, we had the bad guys, and so there were a lot of elements to that show.
Yeah.
And then This Is Us, I'm trying to think if we ever did it. We did a couple of minor stunts, totally minor stunts. So it was really sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. We really didn't do many stunts, but it was complicated in a different way. And for your listeners who may not have seen this show, it's basically about a family, and it takes place over time. And so what happens is the mom and the dad, she's pregnant with triplets, and they end up losing one of the triplets in childbirth. And then while they're in the hospital, the father sees this baby that's been brought in, and they're a white couple, and he sees an African-American baby and who's up for adoption. And so he says, oh my gosh, we lost one of our triplets. Now we have twins. Let's adopt this other baby. And so it's all about their journey with their son, who is Black in a white family, but and so there are all sorts of elements in terms of the racial overtones, but there's also in terms of the interconnectivity of the family itself, and it's sort of like looking through a scrapbook or a photo book, and saying, oh, I remember when that happened, and thinking how that influenced what you did later, or influenced how you acted in a certain situation based on what had happened in the past. So we were going back and forth in time, and it got to be a little tricky here and there. It's fairly complicated.
Yeah, Richard, I have not seen This Is Us yet, but I'm excited.
Oh, you haven't?
It's a show I can binge watch.
Oh, there's 6 seasons you can binge watch. Oh, it'll keep you busy for a while.
Yes. But I do think, so one of the class topics was TV shows and film. So we discuss our favorites, and I think some of my students have seen it. So they'll be excited to hear about this.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then my personal favorite, I haven't seen Chicago Med either, but Grey's Anatomy, I grew up on it. It's got however many seasons. A lot of my students,
they're up to 21 or 20. Yeah, they're up to 21 or 22 seasons now.
Yeah.
There are actors who started in their 20s who are now pushing 50.
Sure.
And you really feel like you've grown up with those characters over the course of that 20 some odd years, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the longer running shows in the history of TV.
Yeah, definitely. But that one, I know that my students will be excited because they use that to learn English. And then it also, it's in the United States, so it makes them excited
exactly.
to learn more.
It takes place, it's a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else about those shows before I move on to the storytelling piece I want to ask?
No, that pretty well covers it.
Yeah, it's so cool though. I love hearing about this. It's super interesting. Okay, so how has your work in the entertainment industry influenced your understanding of storytelling and its impact on viewers?
Well, so I've been working as a professional storyteller, creating TV shows and movies and commercials, because even a commercial, there's somewhere you just have a pitch person stand up and talk about a product, but most TV commercials have an element of story in them. And so I've been working as a professional storyteller in the entertainment business for 30 some odd years, and I've realized that story has an incredibly powerful medium to be able to convey concepts, images, and thoughts, and it bubbles over into our personal lives. Yeah. And in fact, storytelling is really important personally and professionally for everyone. Yeah. When you step back and you take a look at the communication that we have every day with folks, there's a statistic that says 85% of all of our daily communication is through story or storytelling or some sort of a narrative structure. And if you stop and think about any given day, you go out to lunch with a friend, you have a conversation, they say, hey, what'd you do this weekend? You launch into a story. Yeah. If you're at work and someone says, hey, we had a problem out in the field, what happened with that? You launch into a story. If you're at a job interview, say for instance, you're interviewing me, Grace. Yeah. So you say, Richard, are you responsible? Are you punctual? And I might say, yes, I am, Grace. Okay, well, that's an answer, right? And then we move on to the next question. However, consider this. You say, Richard, are you responsible? Are you punctual? And I might say, yes, in fact, I work as assistant manager at McDonald's. And last Friday, there was a French fry fire, and I had to call the fire department and get the fire extinguisher. I had to call the manager because he had gone home. And so in telling that story, you get a sense of who I am, of what I'm about. You also get a sense of the fact that I can communicate on the fly. Yeah. And that I'm responsible because I'm telling you a story that illustrates that. I'm just not telling you, yes, I am responsible. I'm giving you a great example of how I was responsible in a certain situation. Yeah. So when you're going through the resumes, you're going to write down, French fry fire on my resume. And then a week later or two, when you finally decide you're going to hire someone for the position, you're going through the resumes and you're thinking, okay, there was that person with glasses, there was a person with a striped shirt and with red hair, and then, oh, French fry fire. That's right, Richard. the French fry fire. And you remember the story, and there's a connection there because we connected as I was telling you the story. And so the value of that simple story in telling you and showing you and illustrating the fact that I am responsible, I am punctual, I can think on my feet, that has incredible value. It's very powerful. Yeah. And so chances are I'm going to get the job because I stood out, and you remember me, you remember how I communicated. And so one of the other cool facets of story is I've read 300 some odd master's theses and doctoral dissertations in terms of my my preparation and my research into how story works. And people who use story primarily, I mean, and they've measured children, but also folks who are learning English as a second language.
Yeah.
People who tell stories and hear stories start to understand the structure of language, of story, even though you may not understand the actual word protagonist. Like a child may not understand the word protagonist, antagonist, call to action, denouement, climax, resolution, the various parts of a story. You can still understand how stories unfold. And so as you start approaching a language, either a first language if it's a child learning English and reading, or it's someone who's learning English as a second language, you have a basis, a foundation of understanding of story, so you can start to place things ahead of the story. You start to understand, oh, now I expect that this will happen. So you're understanding the context of the story on a much higher level, and that enables you to understand the language on a much lower level, really. Yeah. And so it really helps. I mean, when I learned how to speak Spanish, I had this incredible teacher, and she would have us tell fairy tales, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella. And so because it's interesting, everyone knows the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Everyone knows Cinderella. Everyone knows, Little Red Riding Hood. And so what would happen is, as you're listening to an account of one of those stories, you know what's going to happen because you've heard the story in English or Spanish if you're learning English, whatever language your home language is. You know the story. And so your mind fills in the blanks.
Yeah.
And you can understand, if someone was telling you, say for instance, you were listening to Chicago Med, right? Then you'd go, or Grey's Anatomy, you'd be struggling a little bit to catch up because you don't know where the story's headed. Right. Whereas if you know where the story's headed, you're all of a sudden filling in those blanks. Those vocabulary words are starting to come to you quicker and quicker because Beanstalk, he's climbing up, he's going to see the giant, the context. So those words are going to start to make sense to you more quickly and more efficiently. And so story is incredible. It's really how we communicate best, and how our brains are wired after 10 or 15,000 years of humanity, right?
Yeah.
How our brains are wired to process information.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much because we talked about this in my master's program. I got my degree in TESOL, so teaching English to speakers of other languages. And one of our classes, we talked a lot about the power of storytelling, not just what you're talking about, like stories, but then you're being able to tell your own story.
Yes.
And having students talk about what they already know and what do they know better than their life and their experiences.
Exactly.
Having them share those. So it's bringing up a lot of things that I've learned throughout my studies. I wanted to ask you about your Spanish learning journey.
Yes.
Because this is tied in for my students as well, language learning. When did you start learning Spanish, or are you bilingual since childhood?
No, I started learning Spanish in high school, and I took 2 years, but I've always been amazed at how much of it stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because of this teacher who implemented storytelling as we were learning.
Yeah, definitely. And then you use it, then you're in the film industry, which is storytelling.
Right. A bit here and there. I haven't shot overseas or down in Mexico, so I haven't had that much occasion to use my Spanish, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And you actually pretty much covered my next question, but if you want to share anything else for my learners,
Sure.
Could you discuss the significance of storytelling in language learning, and how can it enhance their learning experience, especially for English language learners? Do you have anything else to share on that?
Well, again, you mentioned that having folks talk about themselves, it's an important part. I mean, so what I've done in my approach to storytelling is I love stories and storytelling in books, but my approach is to get folks telling the stories themselves rather than just hearing stories. And what I do is when I go in to a class or a workshop or a seminar, I'm working, whether it's in little breakout sessions or assignments, I'm working on getting the folks in the workshop to actually create their own stories. And there's an interesting one of the shortest stories that you can tell. It's called a 6-word story. Have you ever heard of that, Grace?
I have, yeah. I've had to do that exercise, but please
you have?
explain.
Okay.
Explain it to people who haven't.
So the 6-word exercise, it's based on a story, a 6-word story that Ernest Hemingway wrote, or at least it's attributed to him. And he wrote this story that goes like this: baby shoes for sale, never worn. Baby shoes for sale, never worn. So that's 6 words. But let's dig into that for a second. Baby shoes for sale, right? So, I mean, you conjure up an image of these tiny little shoes,
right,
but never worn. There's no scuff marks on them. The laces are perfect. They may be even in the little box. And then you think about the ramifications of never worn and what that means. And you think about, oh, why did the baby never wear the shoes? Or maybe the baby never got here. And you think about the mother and the father and what happened, and they maybe lost this baby. And so all of a sudden it conjures up, I mean, you have this incredible story where you're filling in the information based on your personal experience. And so what I typically do in this workshop, and I do this breakout session, it's the 6-word story, is I tell the 6-word story that Hemingway wrote, and actually back up a second before that, what I do is I have folks come up with a sense memory. So that would be, feel, sound, sight, hearing, taste. They come up with a sense memory from their childhood. And then as we talk about this 6-word story, then I have everyone create a 6-word story that's based on that childhood memory. So instead of just, it's really tough for folks in a class or in a seminar or in a workshop, especially when you have limited time. It's hard to just go from 0 to 90, right? And when I say 0 to 90, 0 miles an hour to 90 miles an hour, or 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's hard if I just say, write a 6-word story. Everyone just freezes and says, okay, I have no idea what to write about. I have no idea what to write about. And they'll waste 10 or 15 minutes just trying to figure out what to write about.
Yeah.
So in thinking of this sense memory, and that's a really good one, because you can say, think of a sense memory from when you were a child. And I mean, you may have 4 or 5 just come, boom, hit you in the face, right? And so pick one of those and pick one that resonates with you. And then when I say, okay, we're going to talk about this 6-word story, now you have a foundation, you have a subject for this 6-word story. And it's also a subject that, like baby shoes for sale, never worn, your childhood memory is tied to your inward emotion. And if your memories of, the smell of the chocolate cake that your mom used to bake, or the touch your mom used to rub your forehead to calm you down when you were nervous or anxious. So those things are tied into these personal memories. And so I did one of these, and one of the guys got up and he talked about the only time that his father had ever hugged him.
Oh, wow.
In a 6-word story. And another woman, actually, I just used that example, she talked about how her mom used to rub her forehead to calm her down when she was nervous or anxious. And so she has this memory, this through line through her life of her mom and this touch point.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting exercise, but the ultimate goal is to get the students or the participants of a workshop to communicate on several different levels.
Yeah.
Because when you're just starting to learn a language, you're speaking on a very rudimentary level.
Right.
And so you're just, you're grasping for vocabulary words. So there's sort of the very base level of getting a concept out there. Mom touch forehead,
Sure.
right? But then as you learn more about language and the nuances and subtlety of language, you can then, my mom touched my forehead when I was anxious. All of a sudden, it's the word anxious. It's sort of like, it's sort of like never worn.
Yeah.
My mom touched my forehead when I was anxious.
Yeah.
And you sort of go, oh, wow. Right? There's this connection. If you just said, oh, my mom touched my forehead, it could have been, oh, she was just wiping some dirt off, or she would, or just flipping my hair out of my eyes, or whatever it is, right? But when you get to that word anxious or nervous, or then all of a sudden, you start to understand the context of this relationship between the mother and the son, or the mother and the daughter.
Sure. So now my wheels are turning, which for those listening, that just means I have so many ideas right now. I've done this activity in class, and I've also I've been the student in the class,
Right.
And I love this extra step, because usually I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know where to even start. So adding that prompt, I'm doing this in class next week.
Oh, fantastic. Well, another one you can do is that's fun are haikus.
Okay. Yeah.
And so a haiku is a little, it's a poem, but not a rhyming poem. But it's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables. Yeah. And so I also do a very similar thing with a sense memory, and then creating a haiku. And it's really interesting between the differences between each, the 6-word story and the 17 syllables. Yeah. It gives you a little bit more room to play around with. But they're great exercises because they work on so many different layers and levels. I've had folks come up and do a funny haiku. Yeah. I've had folks come up and do a haiku where, I mean, you look out in the audience, and there are people literally with either welling up with tears because they're so emotional based on this, this childhood memory.
So 2 great activities that I'll be doing. And these webinars and workshops you're talking about, what is the general topic or theme that you're teaching?
Well, so for the past year and a half or 2 years, it's storytelling, and it's for organizations. I work with startups and businesses, and I work with colleges and tech schools, and so the idea is creating a storytelling culture within the organization. And so that storytelling culture then permeates the experience. Yeah. If it's a student, that the storytelling permeates that student experience. So you may have the student being taught by a professor who's really utilizing story in their class, and then the student is then prompted to use story in terms of finishing up the assignments. So it ceases to be just a true or false or multiple choice, or just an essay for writing an essay's sake. And it ends up becoming almost a life skills approach, because again, we communicate best through story. And so in terms of being able to apply a narrative structure to any answer is really important. And let me give you an example. So another breakout session that I do, we've only got 10 minutes left. Okay. So another breakout session that I do is I read a technical description for something, right? And the one I typically start off with is a technical description of Beethoven's 5th Symphony. And the technical description it's only 50 words or something. It's fairly short, but it says something like, this is a major symphony, four-part symphony for an orchestra. It starts off with the first section is a scherzo in A flat minor, and all of a sudden, you're lost in these technical terms. Yeah. And everyone just sort of gets lost. And they're just sitting up like, huh? And then I say, well, what's wrong with that? And everyone says, I can't understand the language. I can't understand the terms. And this would be a great exercise for the. So what we then do is we talk about, well, how can we how can we rewrite this as an experiential account? And so instead of hearing it's an A flat minor scherzo, it becomes, I sat in the concert hall and the orchestra started playing 4 notes, bum, 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 bum. And then they repeated the 4 notes, bum, 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 bum. And then it went into a light, airy part. Da, 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 da. And all of a sudden, a shiver sort of went down my spine. All of a sudden, we are there with the storyteller. And so, for instance, I have technical descriptions about a bicycle, and it's, a human powered vehicle with pedals and a chain. And you're sort of like, what the heck is this? Or a corn dog, it's a sausage that's on a wooden stick wrapped in cornmeal. It's dipped in, and you go, what the heck is it? And it's a corn dog, like at the state fair. And so these technical descriptions, it's fun to play with language and realize that you can create an experience. And like, for instance, with the bike, one of the things that always comes up is, I know that they really get the exercise when they say, and one of the coolest things about riding this bike is the wind flowing through my hair.
Yep, there you go.
Right?
That's a great
Or the taste, the combination of the taste of the cornmeal and the hot dog inside so you're really looking for what is the base experience contained within this thing that you're trying to describe. And so that can really help with language because it reduces the communication to, what are the 6 words you could use to describe a corn dog or describe a bicycle? Again, going sort of back to that 6-word story of Hemingway's. And it really prompts folks to be efficient with their words, but also be very descriptive and communicative with their words.
No, it's absolutely perfect for my audience. Anybody learning a language, and teachers as well. I have some teachers who listen. So these are great activities that you can do as a teacher or if you're learning a language yourself. So I appreciate those.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then Richard, the last part of the podcast, I know we're running short on time, is usually a quote, an idiom, or an expression, and it can be related to today's topic or just one that you enjoy. And I want to ask if you have anything in mind.
Absolutely. So in the film or TV business, there's a term, hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait. Okay.
Hurry up and wait. What does that mean? Well, think about it. You've got an actor who is a major actor. And so you want to be prepared when that actor comes on set. You want all the lights to be set. You want all the props, all the cameras, everything. So you get the crew. You're buzzing like bees there. Right? You're getting everything ready. And you're like, listen, the main actor, the lead actor, Meryl Streep or Jennifer Lawrence, Bradley Cooper, they're coming on and we better be ready when they come on. So we got to hurry and get ready. So it's hurry, get ready. Okay, they've been called. We're waiting for the actor to step out of their trailer. Okay, the door just opened. Oh, nope. The actor went back in the trailer. It seems that they've forgotten something. Okay, we're still waiting. Yes, we hurried. We hurried up. We hurried. We got everything done. And now nope, the actor's walking. We're waiting. Okay, nope. Now the actor stopped at craft service. They're fixing a cup of tea. They're waiting for the tea bag. Okay, it's steeping. Yes, we're still waiting. We hurried to get ready. And the actor's coming. Nope, they stopped and they went back for a donut. Okay, now they're coming. And here's the actor. He's on set. Okay. The actor needs to run their lines. Okay. So everyone please be quiet. We're going to wait while the actor runs their lines.
Oh my God.
Okay. Okay, now we did the scene. Okay, now we got to get ready for the next scene. Let's hurry. We have to get ready for the next shot or the next scene. So that is hurry up and wait.
That is perfect. And you can tell that you are a storyteller. So good. I love it. Well, Richard, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed interviewing you. I want to ask as well, where can my followers find you? Where are you at? Or is there anything I can put in the podcast description?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let me first of all, if you don't mind, I'd love to plug my book. So
Yeah,
we
please.
haven't been able to talk about ChatGPT and AI, but when I teach storytelling to students or business owners, freelancers, all sorts of folks, I used to just talk about how powerful and useful storytelling is.
Yeah.
And now there's a new tool that can really help you with story. It can also help with language because it's an amazing translator, and that is ChatGPT or Bard or Bing, or there are a number of chat bots, chat technology coming out now. But ChatGPT is sort of the granddaddy of them all. And I've written a book. It's called ChatGPT Simplified. So it's a very easy read, no technical terms, or if there are technical terms, I describe what they are. And it has lots of pop culture references and lots of humor. And so it's a very quick read that can help bring you up to speed and figure out how to utilize ChatGPT to increase your productivity, become more creative, and everything it has to offer. So you can go to my website, which is aiexplained.ai. aiexplained.ai, and there's a link to the book. There's also a free book there that you can download, ChatGPT Case Studies. So that's where you can find out more about me. If you want to contact me, you can send me an email down at the very bottom, but it's aiexplained.ai.
aiexplained.ai. Okay, I will add that to the description as well. We've been talking about ChatGPT in my classes, so
Yes.
My students will be very interested, but I'll be sure to put that in the description. But Richard, seriously, thank you so much. I've really appreciated interviewing you today.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure, Grace. I've really enjoyed it.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the English with Grace podcast. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did like this episode, please go ahead and like and subscribe and keep an eye out for more episodes coming soon.